last week when I was here, those of you who were here last week, I gave out a lot, and I mean a lot of information. Right?
Yes.
Yeah, it was a lot of information. I'm very interactive, so I'm gonna need y'all to talk. If y'all don't talk, I'm gonna leave. I promise you. There's a couple of places I want to go, but I'm just saying, I'm gonna do what I need to do here. So I'm definitely gonna need you guys to talk. But my lectures are a little bit different than what this schematic of this Raise Your Vibration group is. I'm not as interactive in terms of telling you to write things down, and in terms of giving you instructional direction, in terms of what it is that you need to do for maybe self-esteem and, you know, the brokenness inside. I come from a perspective that we're all made whole already, right? So anything internally wrong, that's wrong with you, is actually something that's trying to get your attention, that something needs your attention, not necessarily that it's wrong. It just needs your attention and your focus. And once you focus on it, you can balance it. So, let me start off by asking you all a question, because y'all gonna talk to me today. What do you all think Egypt is? What is your perspective on Egypt? Anybody?
Current Egypt or ancient Egypt? I see Egypt as representing two different realms, two different dimensions. For me, I think of an ancient Egyptian, ancient Egypt, which is to me a whole distinct place, and then there's the current country and region that we refer to it as Egypt. Good
answer, because it would be two distinctive types of Egypt, because of the fact that you have to remember, Egypt is not a place as much as it is the people that comprise the place of Egypt. They'll have you thinking that Egypt is pyramids. Egypt is the people, not the pyramids, because it's the people that built the pyramids. Anybody else?
I think of kind of like the mystery that surrounds it, from a modern perspective, because we still question as to how the pyramids were built, and from the metaphysical literature and spiritual literature that I've read, I come to see that civilization, the people, as very spiritual people, very close contact with their inner authentic self, and they knew of the higher principles that we can employ to create our reality.
So you said, one of the things that you said spiritual, you said higher spiritual, right?
Yeah.
And you said, what else did you say? Something about
Metaphysical.
You said metaphysical?
Yeah, and close to their inner being, the innermost I am presence or spirit, whatever you want to call it.
And you said innermost spirit, right?
Yeah. Very intelligent as well. They were craftsmen.
Okay. Interesting. When you said some things about Egypt being spiritual, metaphysical, and innermost spirit. This word, metaphysical, just means more physical.
Yeah.
Just means more physical. It's interesting because you use spiritual, and then you said metaphysical.
Well, I said metaphysical literature that I've read.
Yeah. But it would be considered more metaphysical, spiritual, innermost spirit. It's all pretty much rolling into the same concept of Egypt being a mysterious spiritual place, or a place where the innermost mysteries of mankind and science and space and all that stuff is found in Egypt. And it's true. It is. But the purpose is to understand, how does that relate to you? Because I can sit up here and talk about Egypt all day, but if you have no connection to it, it won't make it so. What difference does it make that I'm telling you about it? How does it relate to you? And what function does it have in relationship to your everyday existence? How do we make the information from Egypt practical? Well, the principles that you're talking about concerning spirituality, metaphysical, and innermost spirit are principles that were present in their everyday existence. So these were not things that stood out. This was just life. So when we get to a point that we start recognizing spirituality as something that we need to practice, or as something that we need to engage in, then we are falling way, way, way out of bounds with nature. because nature is natural. We don't call nature spiritual, we call it nature. You follow? So if we're at a point now where we're beginning to call things that we see as natural spiritual, then we need to start questioning what is natural. What is our natural netter behavior? And is it consistent with how we're living from a day-to-day basis? Most people get up 9 to 5, job, they go to work, they eat lunch, they go home, go to sleep, get up and do the same thing the next day. Right? And we call that's natural. That's regular everyday life. That's what you're supposed to do. You go to work, you know what I'm saying? You have a job, you're productive, you get up, you go home, you go to bed. Well, to go and be inside a box, whether it's a job in an office, whether it's a job in a garage, the box is mental because your time is blocked, right? 9 to 5, 3 to 7, 12 to 8. These are time blocks, right? And nature or natural, we talked about this last week, is not a block, it is a spiral. It spirals out from a point. So even your regular everyday 9 to 5 is not natural or natural. It's not. Nothing in the highest form of laws exists on a 9 to 5 scale. We don't even count like that naturally in nature. We don't count that way. Right? We talked about that last week too. As far as 9 being the highest number. Remember, did y'all do who was here last week? Remember?
I was, but I was here the last 15 minutes.
Okay, all right. So let me refer a little bit back to last week. Because some of y'all, I'm seeing some new faces. Some people was like, you were here, so you should be answering some of these questions. You. You too, brother. You can talk now. But last week we talked about how 9 is the highest form. 9 to the 9th number, 9 power 9 is the highest form, or highest number in all existence. The highest form of all conscious gases. And from 9 when 9 begins to die and decay, it goes into what is called 6 ether, which is a less potent form of gases from 9 ether. And we talked about how these gases or these these falls in nature are determined by time, being that it spirals out from a point, right? How many of you are familiar with nebulas? You know what a nebula is? Come on, 6th grade science.
Something in space.
Well, let me put it this way. A nebula is what happens when a quadrant is picked up out in space by the choicest materials in matter, in space in and of itself. There's a consciousness in space that organizes electromagnetic positive and electromagnetic negative energy into a particular quadrant. And once that energy comes into a particular quadrant, it begins to counterclockwise rotate, right? This should sound familiar to women because this is what happens inside of you in fertilization. It's called the blastocyte. And from that, the counterclockwise rotation, it begins to expand because you have different cellular divisions that are taking place. The mitotic phases are taking place inside. Well, consistent with that, in nature, you have electromagnetic positive and electromagnetic negative energy being gathered into one place and rotating counterclockwise until the mass of its center matches, or the gravity of its center matches the mass of its area. Then when that happens, it shrinks. And then that process begins all over again, smaller. That when it happens when the mass of the center or the magnetism of the center matches the area, that is the nebula that is being formed. When it shrinks and it forms other nebulas inside and on top of it to match the space that it shrunk from, those nebulas move out from that quadrant and they go into different places, and then the same thing happens to them, and then those yield sons, both male and female sons. Oh, so now I got your attention. Yeah. The suns have gender. Yes, suns have gender. The stars that you see in the sky that have already burned out, they have gender. I mean, don't y'all have gender? Y'all have male and females, right? In the microcosm and the macrocosm, you have a microcosm of the reflection of the macrocosm, so as above, so below. So why wouldn't the sun be male and female? How many people think that the sun is male in his nature?
Yeah, it's nature.
Why would you say it's male?
Because it gives
It's projected.
It's projecting.
Male, masculine, male energy is projected. It's like a positive polarity. Projects.
Right.
Projects.
It's around.
I'm not saying all suns are male. It's just a male quality to project
Mm-hmm.
in that manner.
And it's
you know?
aggressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's prominences. I was like, yes, aggressive. Yeah, it's prominences.
It sends out its flame.
Exactly, it's prominences. They're called electrical storms, right? They're called electrical storms that take place on the surface of the sun, or they're called the sun's prominences, that shoot out its material into space. Now, if the sun shot its material or prominences out into space, and the earth was born from the sun, which in fact it was, right? And it got caught in the sun's gravitational pull, because remember I told you that the sun started off as a nebula from its mother, right? And it moved out from that quadrant into other places in space, and then it became a sun. But that gravitational pull of it is still present, inherent in the middle, the center of the sun. So it has the ability through its gravitation to make planets rotate in specific distances around it, to maintain, right, or to sustain. Remember I told you all about that word last week, Rabil Alamin, sustainer of the boundless universes, right? And the first part of that is Ra, sun, Re, sun, Ra, sun, right? So when you have that sustaining or that sustenance, it is like unto a female, because it nurtures what it has created, right? And you all are on the surface of the earth and being nurtured by a male sun. So it's dual in its nature. The sun is both male and female. Why do we say that? Because they're both males and females on this planet that are called Sumerians, which means sun children, or children of the sun, right? So when we're talking about things like working a regular 9 to 5 and looking at how nature behaves and the success in nature and the success in the way nature perpetuates itself to perfection, when we apply that to our lives, and if we're not living consistent with that model, then are we in fact perfecting ourselves? No, we're not. So if we're not living in accord with that level of lawfulness, right, then things like this, we start talking about. We start talking about becoming spiritual. And this becomes a way for us to kind of go back to that state of natural behavior, right? But the moment that you start looking for spirituality is the moment that you will not find it. Because to want a thing is to not have it. That is why you want it. That is the nature of want. To want to be spiritual is to never be spiritual. To want to have knowledge is to never have knowledge. Because by its very nature, it says that you don't have it. Now, to become spiritual is to be less than the standard of what you're seeking. Right? If you don't understand what I'm saying, you're going to stop me and say, I don't understand what you're talking about. Does everybody understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, you said just go back to the simplest form of that is natural.
Right. You're dealing with nature. So these terms, not wrong. Spiritual, metaphysical, which just means meta, more physical, more physical, more physical, more physical, more, oh, okay. So more me. Metaphysical, it just means more of who you physically are, right? So your innermost spirit, what does that mean? What is a person's innermost spirit? What do you think that is? Anybody?
Just what I said, just down to the minimum of that which you are, that which is.
Right, down to the minimum. So when we look at these things and we talk about Egypt, how do these things relate to Egypt in your mind? Or do they? Because some of you all come from different walks of life. Some of you come from Christianity. Some of you come from Catholicism. Some of you come from nothingism. Some of you come from, because some people just be like, I just go. I don't necessarily sit up there and listen all the time to what they say I go. I just go.
I actually have no idea what they have to do with Egypt.
Well, when you're talking about spirituality, metaphysical existence in a person's innermost spirit, hold on a second. When you're talking about these concerning these principles relate to Egypt because Egypt is the place where all of the ideologies for religion came from in the first place.
Egypt, the people, Egypt, the location.
Egypt, the people, and the location.
Ancient Egypt?
Ancient Egypt. Let's be clear. Ancient Egypt, the people, and the location. And the reason why I say it's important to understand that is because there would be no church if there was no Egypt. There would be no nothing if there was no Egypt. Egypt is the spiritual center for the entire world. Not just Africa.
You're referring to ancient Egypt.
I'm referring to ancient Egypt, not current Egypt right now, because those people are not the original Egyptians. Those people are a mixture of Turks, Jalians, people that came from the north and mixed in with the original Nubans that were already inhabiting that land. And those people were the people that I talked about last week when I said that the pyramids that y'all see in Egypt, those big pyramids, those are old, they're very, very, very new. If you want to actually look at the original pyramids, you have to go to Nuba and look and see what the original pyramids look like, and they're about this tall, very small. There are holes in the pyramids in Giza, entrances like this. You be seeing them signs, we're getting ready to go in, and they're trying to crawl. We're going down into the canals, right? Obviously that wasn't meant for you, bro. If you're doing all that, they wasn't talking about, you wasn't supposed to be going in there, right? And they walk through these huge, these pylons, and the pylons are, the size of buildings, and they walking through them, and it wasn't necessarily for you if you don't know what's on the walls. And then what we did leave on the walls, the Rosetta Stone, we left that on purpose because there's nothing on it. They think that they've interpreted things in Egypt, but they have not. They haven't interpreted anything. They still can't paint a house that withstands rain, sleet, water, and hail. The pyramids, you walk inside there, the paint looked like it was done yesterday, with no light inside. With no light inside. Because there's no windows in there. So how did they do that? What were they using? These were natural people who were following natural laws. Now, if we're going to talk about spirituality and raising people's vibration, then we first have to start with what is the medium by which we are raising the vibration with? What is it composed of? What is it historically? What is it genetically? What is this body composite? I mean, what is the instrument that we are using to raise our vibration? Anybody?
Love.
Love.
Vibration of love.
Okay.
Our thought.
Thoughts? What else?
Emotion.
Emotion. What else? What is the most primal thing that you need in order to raise your vibration?
Consciousness.
What else?
Sleep.
Huh?
Fear.
You need fear? Interesting. What else? Huh?
Sleep.
Sleep? Breath? And I'm glad, the reason I asked this question is because, you do need to sleep. But the reason I asked this question is because the answers that I was kind of sure I would get the answers that I got, which is not bad, right? But the first thing that you need in order to raise your vibration is you. You need yourselves. You need access to yourselves. If you see, y'all talking about emotions and spirit and consciousness and love, right? But those are things that are responses to interactions that you have had. So if you aren't familiar with yourself, then there can be no raising of any vibration if you don't know who and what you are. Right? So we come to a class like this, right, where we start with the fundamental, most primordial place on the planet where you can get a vibration at, and that would be Egypt, which is located in Africa. Period. You have to start there. Geographically, topographically, physically, metaphysically, spiritually, and otherwise. Because if you don't start there, right, then you can't have a foundation in what it is that you're studying, and especially if you're melanated or not, because truth is truth, yes? Right?
Yeah.
You won't know the fundamentals of what it is that you're doing. I'll give you an example. Take the liberal arts curriculum, for example. Right? What is a liberal arts curriculum? Does anybody know? The liberal arts curriculum is what you study in school, in elementary school. Grades K through 6. Right?
Humanities, math, sciences, languages, history.
Yeah, liberal arts. So, look at the word. The word is liberal. 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 Liberal arts. Means to free. Right? This word liberal means to free. Liberty. Free. Arts. Right? So the liberal arts curriculum was meant to free something. But what was it meant to free? Because we don't free them kids. We put them kids in boxes and rooms, and we tell them, sit here until 2:30 in the afternoon, and if you say something that you shouldn't be saying, we're going to free you to the principal's office. That's about as far as your freedom going to go. Then at 2:30, you can be free to go home and harass your mamas and daddies, because we ain't about to, you feel what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. There's nothing that is free in that curriculum. Yet, guess where it came from? It came out of Egypt. The liberal arts curriculum was to free the soul from its body by understanding its function and its place on earth. So yeah, you need to study geography. Why? Because the geography of the land is directly related to you. Why? Because you eat from the land in which you live. So the food that you eat has a chemical relationship to your body because you come from that land. That's why certain fruits grow in certain places and certain people have certain biochemical responses when they eat other fruit because they're not in their original land. So they can't eat that food and be healthy, yes? Right. So if y'all over here in the United States, and some of y'all come from Cameroon and West Africa, some of y'all come from Somalia, some of y'all come from Ethiopia, some of y'all come from Senegal, right? And you eating hot dogs. They don't have hot dogs in Senegal. Right? Cancer, diabetes, lymphatic cancer. You follow what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. All these different diseases and things come because you're not in tune. You're not balanced. You're not Neteru. You're not natural. You're not God-like anymore. You've fallen into spirit. As an attempt to get back to being potent. Now, last week I talked about potency. Right? And how when you fall down from your potent state of 9, let's just say for purposes of this class, because unless you can explain it, which I wrote that down last week too. How many people saw me break down 9? Mm-hmm. Right? And how it's the highest number, but it's potent. Its potency is unlimited potential coming from that cipher or 0. All things exist in that cipher. Unlimited energy, potential energy. 9, it becomes conscious. Then we start 1, awareness, right? Then from there we get the duality of itself. And then from there we get 3, creativity. The creativity of what? Order. The order of what? Things. So you got 4 and 5. So you start with that potential energy, the awareness of itself, 9 at its potency. Then you get its consciousness at 1. You get its duality at 2. You get its creative function at 3, the creation of order at 4, and then at 5 you get things. Right? The order of things that are created. So what are these things that were created? At 6 you get what? You get man. Because man was created on the what?
6th day.
On the 6th day. Do you follow what I'm saying to you? It is very, very important that you know the makeup of yourself before you start talking about what it is that you're going to do with yourself. You have to know what you are. Not just talk about what you follow what I'm saying? So starting at that foundation is where we begin. That is why I'm here teaching about Egypt. Again, melanated and non-melanated alike. I don't care if you're white or black. Facts are facts. All right, Adam, you have raised your hand. You got a question? I'm sorry.
You answered it actually. I was going to try to say, so what? I was just going to ask you before you, why Egypt? But you just answered it.
Yeah, because that is the culture of that. What you gonna say?
Could you explain the melanin, which you've been mentioning?
Yes.
Melanated, non-melanated?
Melanin is a decoder for light information. Does everybody understand what that means? I'll break it down for you. Very simple thing. How many of you have computers at home? Okay. When you look at a computer, you see a black board before you turn it on, right? It is only when you activate it or you turn it on that you see light, right? And this light is in binary code. That's how computers work. In the most primitive form of computers, they have what are called routines and subroutines. And they use a language called GoSub. Well, it's not a language, but they use a term in the language. I forget what the actual language was. But it's a GoSub, and it's like a subroutine is what it is. But these binary codes, 0101, 1011, 0101, is how computers communicate with one another in binary code. But the computer has got to light up in order for you to be able to see those codes. So when you're dealing with the sun, right, it's against a black sky. Yes? But it lights up, right? And it sends out information to things that can what? Receive it. Melanin is a receptor of information directly from nature. Now, why do I say it's a receptor from nature? Because not only does the sun give you information, but it also gives it to plants. Plants have got to receive that information. Why? Because the plants have got to be able to use the process of what? What is it called? Photosynthesis, right? To be able to live. So the sun has got to give that information to plants, and it's also got to infuse the atmosphere in which we live with vital energy. They call it a vitality globule, right? It is taken in through the spleen chakra. When your chakras are undulated and rotating properly, because they rotate clockwise and counterclockwise, and we talked about that last week. The counterclockwise rotation, right, for creation, and the clockwise rotation for destruction. See, y'all gotta listen. That's what I tell y'all need to stop me and ask me what are you talking about now. We all get it so that I can explain it to you. But long story short, this, in terms of melanin, this information, melanin can decode it. It decodes that light information into what we call, or what you all call, inspiration. Right? You'll be sitting somewhere and say, how do you know? I was just thinking, what if we reverse the magnetic polarity of the planet and push away from it? Right? People do that stuff all the time. People made up TVs from thinking like that. Made up cell phones from thinking like that. And by the way, the cell phone is a very old invention. A black man did that. Go look it up. Go check it out. It's old. It's not new. Very old. Actually, the antennas in Egypt were doing that. Back and forth. Don't believe me? Check it out. Go look it up. I'll leave y'all to do that homework for yourself. But long story short, at the end of the day, to answer your question, melanin is important because we can decode information directly from the atmosphere when you are clean. when you clean your melanin, right? Now, how do you clean melanin? You have to clean it through taking in the right kind of food and information. The information has got to be right information in order for you to become a light being. Now, we talk about enlightenment, people who are enlightened, right? But who knows what the flow of light consists of? Anybody?
You say?
What is light?
Light is
Like that light.
is energy particles coming at you in different speeds of light. I mean different speeds.
Right, you said particles.
Yeah.
The flow of electrons.
I was gonna say, energy without mass, like, sustains momentum.
You too deep for me, bro. I wouldn't even go in there. You dropped me in the ocean. But no, the flow of electrons is where you get light from. Right? Electrons. Now, we talked last week about protons versus electrons. Protons being positive, electrons being negative. But the flow of electrons is consistent with feminine energy. I talked about this last week, how important women are. Women are extremely important, especially right now. Right? The flow of electrons is what produces light. The flow, as a matter of fact, this is what's funny, because how many of y'all are familiar with the Hadron Collider that's taking place out in Sweden right now?
Mm-hmm.
You know about it. So you know what they're doing is they're taking electrons and speeding them up in a centrifuge. And they're taking a magnet and they're pulsing these electrons to make them go faster and faster and faster. And they remove the heat out of the centrifuge so that they can spin and rotate much, much, much faster. The rotation of these electrons, they're trying to get them at 186,272 kilometers per second. What is that? What is 186,272 kilometers per second? It's the speed of light. So if they rotate these electrons at the speed of light, they want to crash them into each other, thereby creating another sun. Right? The flow of electrons is what gives you a light or enlightened body. The charge around your blood cells is proton, electron, proton. It's this. Proton, electron, proton. Around each one of your blood cells. Right? The time that we are living in, and we talked about time last week too. When we said that nature is in its what? What did I say it was in? Those of you here last week.
It's original form.
No? What did I say? I said nature is in a state right now. I said it's not revolution, but what did I say it was?
Evolution.
No. Evolution is close.
Rebellious state.
Huh?
Rebellious state.
No. I said it's in a state of involution.
Oh, yeah.
To revolve to itself. So it is doing this. It is spiraling back, forming that 9 again. You're here. Remember I told y'all that? We're at the bottom state of nature, coming from 9, 6, 3. Here is where you get the Holy Ghost or spirituality from. This is why all of y'all are here, trying to be spiritual. Right? You're trying to be spiritual at 3. Right? Because you have the Father, the Son, and the what? The Holy Ghost. And from the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, you get the what? The who of what? The ghost spell or the gospel of Jesus Christ, which is a spirit being, not a flesh and blood God in the flesh, where its potency or his or her potency would be recognized. The sister asked a question last week. She said, what caused the Bible to come into existence? And I told her it was a decay in conscious moral gases down to 6, right? And then from there, we moved further in nature on the decay side. Because nature has its time of decay and it has its time of incline or increase. It has its winter and rebirth. It has its winter and its summer. So there's nothing wrong with those disciplines insofar as you understand what Islam, Christianity, and Judaism are. You don't hate a brown leaf. You just look at it and say, winter is coming. But you don't pick it up and, I hate. You don't do that. But we do that, though, in religion. We do that with Islam. Muslims hate Jews. Jews hate Muslims. Christians hate Jews and Muslims. You follow what I'm saying? And they're all brown leaves. They're all falling away from something that was more what? More potent. And where was that potency? That potential energy was in Africa. Again, the cult center of the world. So they're all falling away. We're arguing over crumbs on the table when there's a loaf of bread that we're about to receive if you are preparing yourself to receive it. Yes? So that's what the purpose of this information is for. It is to get you to prepare yourselves, to involve yourselves so that you can revolve to who you were. To involve yourself is not to be magical, but it's to be mystical. It's to go inside through meditation. And through going inside through meditation, you can change the charge around your blood cells from proton, electron, proton to electron. Proton, electron, which is the flow of light. That is when you become enlightened. That is when you become a light being. That's what enlightenment is about. Has nothing to do with amassing information, right? You have to amass information for a purpose. It's not to walk around and be heavy and deep and be like, because I did that. I did that in high school. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, man, you know what I'm saying? So I want to build on the day. I'm saying, yo, I ain't going to class, yo. I'm smarter than all the people. The teachers can't talk to me, son. Just talk, man. I'm God, God. I know you know what I'm talking about. Don't act like you know. I know you know. You're from New York. Right? You from Brooklyn? Yeah. And so we already know. We don't even talk about that. But you know what I'm talking about. So, with that being the case, I went to school now. I do have a degree. Let's be clear. I didn't stand in the hallway all day. You understand? I got my education. But what I'm saying is that we all have that ability for transformative purposes. That's what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be transforming. Right? The interdimensional being is who we are. We have the ability to transform interdimensionally. Here's a secret. Not a secret. Here's something I'm going to tell you. I can't call it secrets, I'm telling you. The pyramids in Egypt were short. Right?
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. The pyramids in Nuba were short. The ones in Egypt were bigger. Right? The people of Africa, they're called tides. Some of them are called Hottentots. Call them pygmies. Right? If you go to Africa and you see these little people, they're very, very, very highly respected. These little short people are extremely, extremely highly respected. There's some Africans that I know that said when they walk down the street, they turn and go the other direction. They don't even, they don't want to encounter them because they're very, very powerful people. And these are the ones that were responsible for those little entrances into those huge pyramids. They are the foundation, the tides are, of where those big pyramids came from. They were 5'4" in height, stature. And their bones vibrated at a frequency when they stood between pyramids, right? Because the pyramids have holes in them to make them hum when the wind blows across them. So they actually have a vibrational sound or a vibrational node. They sing. Yes. There's certain crystals and certain stones that they use that vibrate at a specific frequency to transform you. How come they ain't tell you all that? Now, if they knew better, they do better. Or they know better and don't want to tell you. You follow what I'm saying? So with that being the case, when you stood between these pyramids, They would vibrate at a specific frequency, and certain bones in your body would respond to that vibration. These are your ancestors. And they're getting on me about saying that. I'm going to explain that in a second, what the look was for. Because as I'm speaking, I'm being told stuff. And the ancestors are your ancestors, but they're really what you're pulling from for the future. Because they called on you when they were you, and you're here.
Right.
So when we talk about ancestral calling on, and I'm calling on my ancestors, this and that, you're actually calling on your children that are younger than you. Let me explain it to you like this. They have our time screwed up, right? The way we do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. The way we process time is incorrect, right? They think that you're going further into your what? Future. Into your future. But you've already passed your future. You're going into your past. Look, if light is 186,272 kilometers, right? It's clocked at a speed. That's the speed of light. So that means that there's something that stops light on its way. It's clocked. It's coming through something. So it can be clocked, right? That means that it's physical. So if light in and of itself has a speed, how do we tell time? How do we tell time?
Can't tell time.
Well, that's a little bit deep. We'll get into that for a second. But for the purposes of this conversation, right? How do we know that it's 3 o'clock when it's 3 o'clock in the daytime?
Measurement.
Huh?
Sun's position relative to the earth.
Bro, you know what? I need you to come up here next time and teach, because you a little bit too deep for me. You dropped me in the ocean. He said the sun's position in relationship to the earth. You want to know how I look at time? Tell what time it is? I look at my damn watch. And I tell what time it is. 8 o'clock. Oh, it's 4:30. It's 5 o'clock. Right? Because there is light to be able to look at a device and see the device.
What are you saying?
Right, and tell what time it is, right? But if it's 3 p.m. or 3 a.m. at night, as opposed to 3:25 a.m., not at night, in the morning, or what we call shadow hours, right? If it's that time, how do you know?
Moon's position relative to the earth?
Again, I'm going to need you to teach us how to do that. But if it's 3 a.m. in the morning, most people look at a digital clock. And the digital clock, what? It lights up. So light is a constant for time. But if light can be clocked at a speed, then by the time you get to understanding what time is, you are late.
Yeah.
You're late. Always late. So you would be living in a perpetual past. You're living in a perpetual past. By the time you look at the stars at night, those lights have already burnt out. That's the past. You're living in the past. So you calling on your ancestors, right, of the past, but how do your ancestors get here? Huh?
By you.
Yeah, they get here by way of you. And how do you produce your ancestors? Huh?
By birth?
By birth. So they're younger than you. You see? You're actually older than they are. You're calling on your children to assist you and to help you, because there is a tie. Go ahead, ask your question.
No question. I'm just digesting.
Oh, okay, because I saw your face. You just got a question. Yeah, I did, because there's a tie, genetically and otherwise there. And the reason I'm telling you all this is because I constantly call on some ancestors, my ancestors, and that's the answer that they gave me. Why do you call us your ancestors? We're younger than you. I promise you on everything, that's the answer that they gave me. And they didn't give me another name to call them, but I anticipate that one will be coming. I don't know when, but they gave me that tidbit of information. And that's why when I was saying ancestors, I kind of laughed, because I'm like, Yeah, I remember what y'all told me, but they it's like we're younger than you. Go ahead.
So they would be younger than you in relation to their pending incarnation here, but
Correct.
if time is really not what we think it is, and as you say, we're always late and it's not really future, it's not ever, you know.
It's expensive.
Why would they say that to you then? Was that for you to understand?
They said that to me because I'm constantly referring to them as older
Okay.
than me. But it was a correction in saying we are younger than you because you bring us forward here through the woman.